Johnny, I was gonna direct a question to you. We're all parents and we're trying to pull up the best we can. And I know with your story, it's like probably the most abnormal story amongst us because you're a father and you're trying to do it on your own. But what are
I'm
some,
not doing it on my own.
oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
no,
but still, I mean, that it's still a lot. You have two
right on.
kids, right?
I have six altogether. I have two that are in charter school. I got two little ones, and I got two that stay out of town that I see during the summer and spring breaks and all that good stuff.
So you have four in the household.
Yes, ma'am. They upstairs now going crazy.
That's a lot of activity. So I was wondering, what were the specific steps? Like maybe as advice to another parent, what is the specific steps that you did in order to get your kids correctly aligned in something that would be a good option for them?
Okay. And it's levels to it. So first, I'm gonna talk about what I did for myself because I couldn't have got my kids in a better spot without me becoming a better person. So I think the biggest thing is we need more men to be men. Like we live in a culture where our men are caught up in you always hear do it for the culture, do it for your culture, but you hear like we don't own that culture. So I
Mm-hmm.
had to realize me walking around with gold teeth and sagging pants and dreads, that ain't being a man. That's being a mockery. That's been a modern day minstrel show if you study history. So I had to get out of character and being what the society taught me I should be, and I had to figure out who was Johnny. I feel like the biggest thing for all of us is none of us know who we are. We know we're born to our parents and they influence us, and then we go to school and school influences, and then you start watching TV and music and all that, and everything influences you, and you don't know who you are. So I was a walking contradiction of who I really wanted to be to myself. So becoming a father at a young age, like I can't have my kids seeing their daddy with gold teeth in his mouth. Like I really had to realize what I was doing. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
regardless if you like it or not, as a man, you're a role model. And every time you step out the door, every little kid, black, white, no matter what, they looking up to you. And I understood, being an athlete, I had a lot of influence for my children and for my community. And like Tupac said, you don't go to war if you ain't got your money right. So I study history. Like I'm not what society can tell me. I feel like for one to believe in white supremacy, you have to believe in black inferiority. And I don't feel like myself or my kids are less than anyone. So I'm not gonna walk around preaching that message. So for anybody, for myself, like I said, it takes a village. Like as much my mom was a great mother and I love her to death, but I don't step into manhood without a dad. Um, and a lot of kids don't have that. So I train a lot of kids in basketball. I understand what it's like not to know how to control your emotions and not to how to control your anger in these environments. And we're all human. Like I worked at a all private school that was all white, and those little white kids was no different than the little black kids that was around me. They still thought I was cool, and they still ran up and gave me a high five, and they still used to say, "Why are you not in the NBA?" And I say, "Cause I'm here with y'all." And it really opened my eyes that like when you grow up in an all black environment, you literally had this perception that white people are against you. And I talked to my grandfather, and he was like, it's crazy because back in the day, you understood that all white people weren't bad. The government made Jim Crow laws. And
Mm-hmm.
we've some reason got twisted that the government is on our side and it's the white people that's against us. When you look at 3% of people own slave, that the original Civil Rights Act was in 1875. Black people couldn't be Democrats before 1924. Like when you really learn what's going on, when you realize FDR had an entire black cabinet in 1930s. So you had 45 black people in the government in 1930s, but you saying the party switched in 64, like I'm not going to be somebody's puppet. And that's
Exactly.
why I say we need men to step up because, like, no disrespect to women, but you cut the head off the body of fall. And that ain't been disrespectful at all. We're just being the biblical way, Christ over man, man over woman, woman over children. And we got too many women out here trying to provide on their own. And I feel for them. And it's just being real. Like, my daddy was my everything, bro. When my daddy used to get out of jail, I used to be so happy seeing him come home.
Mm-hmm.
And so it
And
ain't, it ain't,
people try to put people down because of their circumstances, but regardless of what your parent is, if they were a drug addict, it
yeah,
doesn't
man.
matter. That's
My,
your
my,
parent,
my,
and
my
you love.
parents had a ton of domestic violence. I mean, they fought all the time. I remember my daddy going to jail, my mama being bloody, but I realized that it had nothing to do with me. That was their issues. They both loved me. They both wanted me to great. I talked to my daddy to this day, and he said, like they put me in a position to win, regardless of what society said. Your parents, the government can't fix what's going on inside your household. And we just got a lot of broken people. When you're broken, you project it out into the world. And so we walking around thinking somebody else is doing something to us, but it's really we need to fix ourselves. And once you fix yourself, you realize ain't nothing stopping you but you. So that's the biggest issue is our mental is what's stopping us from overcoming everything else. Because you walk around thinking there's some white boogeyman in front of you and ain't nobody stopping you at all. I promise you.
And then you putting celebrities on a pedestal. Going back to what you said February 2nd, you mentioned that your kids don't know who Megan Thee Stallion is or Cardi B is. Honestly, you know, knowing a lot about society, that is a step up because we constantly put people that's famous on a pedestal when they're not the ones that can lead us. They're not the ones that have the insight. That's all about money. You know what I'm saying? So
I don't even think it's money, not to cut you off, but Malcolm X said that. Malcolm X said in the black community, only we use our entertainers, our comedians, our athletes. We use them as leaders. You don't do that in the white community. You go to the academics, you go to the scholars, you go to people with knowledge. But in the black community, Ben Carson is a square. Anybody who's black, who's intelligent, we look down on them. And you have to question, why are you telling me to disassociate myself with anybody who has knowledge? I have to question that. But then you could talk about a book called Color, Communism, and Common Sense from 1954, written by a man named Johnson. And he just happened to die in 1959, a year after that book. So there was a lot of communist movements in the early 1910s, 20s, and 30s. There's a reason that all black people have been thought to look the same. But you can go back, and there were slaves that became millionaires. Robert Smalls was a slave and became a congressman and gave a speech in 1895 that black people weren't inferior then. They just needed people to get out their way. So if Booker T. Washington got to college in the 1800s and Robert Smalls is in Congress in 1885, how are you going to convince me in 2021 that I'm less than or I'm inferior or I can't accomplish something simply because of my skin color when my brain doesn't know what color my skin is? My brain doesn't say, oh, you're this color or you're that color. There's no correlation between my brain and the melanin in my skin. If you're trying to play me like that, you think I'm stupid.
You the truth, John. Like, does anyone have anything else they would like to say